Welcome to the Women's Council of Realtors Special Edition Heart to Heart panel. Our conversation today is about heart health. As we wrap up February, a month that remind us about our heart. After all, this is the American Heart Month, as well as love that of course comes from the heart with Valentine's Day. Our three amazing guests are going to share with you some facts, some information, and some stories about how you can take care of your heart health. You know I'm Pamela Banks, and I know that firsthand how heart disease affects our families. 1 in 5 women are affected by heart disease, and myself, my father had a massive heart attack at a very young age. And so I grew up without a dad because of this. And so I think it's very important that we take the time to take this serious and really be proactive for our own health. Our guests today come from all different aspects of this health issue. We're going to start out with Sherry Daniels. Many of you may know Sherry Daniels. She's been a member of the Women's Council ever since she became a realtor in 2017. And she is a broker with Windermere Real Estate in Yakima, Washington. Did I say that right, Sherry? I'm so proud. There you go. Sherry and I go way back. She is an amazing woman, and we have worked together nationally with the Women's Council on some key issues that have made a difference in the industry. And I know she also is very involved with her local and state association in Washington. So we're really glad to have her. Now, our next guest is super important to all of us, and that is Dr. David Krueger. He has years of experience in the field and recently opened up Heart Central of Washington. He's also in Yakima, Washington with Sherry, and he happens to be Sherry's cardiologist. So we're so glad to have him. He has a full service cardiovascular clinic committed to the state-of-the-art medicine as well as personal care. He loves to help people prevent heart disease, and he is going to share with us some known facts about women and the difference that heart disease is on women than it is with men as well. And then next we have, to round it all out, is Lisa Hinton. She is the executive director for the Chicago Heart Association. The Heart Association has many resources and opportunities for us to take part in as research, to get involved as volunteers. There's care, there's advocacy. So there's a lot of things that she's going to share with us about the Heart Association. And Lisa is responsible for managing a huge team over there, as well as working with the volunteers to implement some strategies for improving and advancing our heart health. So we're super glad to have all of you. I want to welcome you today to this very important webinar. Thank you. And we're going to get started with Sherry Daniels. And Sherry, I know that you recently in 2019 had open heart surgery, and to look at you, you wouldn't think you fit the mold as someone that would have, because you're slender, you seem to be in good health. So share with us how that all came about for you, and how the difference it's made in your life.
I'd be happy to. So on my mother's side of my family, there's heart disease, and there is high cholesterol, really high cholesterol, which is very hard for us to control, even with diet and exercise. So a lot of my family is on medication for that. When I was born, I had a heart murmur, and I'm sure at the time, I don't know that they did any further testing when I was born to see, what the cause of it was. I think they were just kind of monitoring that. So I've always known that I've had a heart murmur. When I was in high school, I was on the track team, and I could never run a mile. I just couldn't do it. And I thought, wow, I must be really out of shape, Then when, as I was gardening, I'd kneel down and were pulling weeds or whatever I was doing, and my lower legs would go numb. And I thought, well, I never thought anything of it. That just seemed normal to me. So why would you be concerned about it? So I never talked to the doctors about that. Didn't seem to be a big deal. In my 30s, then I had I developed high blood pressure. And we were having a really hard time controlling that. And so I was on more than one medication for the high blood pressure. And then I moved in 2005 to Montana, and I had an appointment with just a family doctor because I needed to get my medications renewed for my high blood pressure. He just so happened to be married to a cardiologist, and he says, I think that we should do some testing here just to see how, see if there's any other issues behind this blood pressure. Well, she found that I had a bicuspid aortic valve, which is a birth defect. So we only lived in Montana a couple of years. So when I moved to Yakima, I had to go make an appointment with a cardiologist again, because we're monitoring this bicuspid aortic valve and the high blood pressure and the high cholesterol. So I went to the Yakima Heart Center, which is where I met Dr. Krueger. So the first appointment I had was with Dr. Twist, who was one of the founding members of that clinic. And he was feeling my feet, and he says, I can't feel your pulse in your feet. And I kind of joked with him, and I said, well, I must be dead then, I don't know. I didn't know you were supposed to be able to feel a pulse in your feet. Evidently, he could not. So he said, well, I think we need to do a little more testing. So I had some more testing, and they found a second birth defect. And that was a coarctation of thoracic aorta. So we had to get surgery scheduled. So I met with Dr. Sharma. So this was another serendipitous moment for me, because Dr. Sharma is, and Dave's nodding his head, he is a fantastic surgeon. But what makes him so special is that he has done a lot of operations on adults to repair coarctations. And you don't find a surgeon like that in just anywhere. So I was very, very lucky that I moved to Yakima, because Dr. Sharma was able to do that repair on me. So I'm meeting with Dr. Sharma, and he's telling me all about the procedure. And I said, I've got this bicuspid aortic valve too. Why don't we just fix them both at the same time? I just get it done. And he said, no, we got to wait until that wears out a little more. So I said, okay. And he says, well, how about in 2 days, we'll do your surgery. And I looked at him and I said, well, I can't do that. And he said, why? I said, well, because I've signed up for this ABR class, and it's the last one I need to get my designation. And so I really need to take this class. He was mortified. He's like, don't you understand how serious this is? He says, okay, when is your class? And I told him, he says, okay, but then like a day or two after that, you are having surgery. So I got the surgery done. And then the fourth serendipitous moment for me was that, of course, we were, after the surgery in 2008, we were monitoring that bicuspid aortic valve. And in 2019, Dr. Krueger says, okay, it's time. We need to get that thing replaced. So we couldn't do it in Yakima. So I went to Spokane and had that surgery done there, and made the decision. You've got choices between a tissue valve or a mechanical valve. And everybody was telling me, do the mechanical valve. And I really didn't want to, because then you need to be on blood thinners. And I didn't want to go that route. But finally, I listened to the smart people, and I did what they told me to do, and got the mechanical valve. So when the surgeon was in there doing that surgery, they had taken out the defective valve and discovered an aneurysm that was right at the root of that valve, that was not detected through any of the other multitude of tests I had done up to that point. And when I got us out of surgery, he came in and he said, we found an aneurysm. It's a good thing we did, he said, because it was so thin, we could see right through it. So I know in my heart of hearts that God has been putting me in touch with people who I needed, whether I knew it or not. And I know that it is because of that I am alive today. That aneurysm, when I was out golfing, could have just burst and I'd be gone. So the lessons I've learned through this whole process is that you need to listen to your body. If something seems like it's not right, you need to go and talk to your doctor about it. If your doctor is not listening to you, get another doctor.
Yeah.
You know, you have to be heard. You know, I've got a wonderful cardiologist here, and he is great because he takes the time to actually, I love you, you know it. He takes the time to just sit and listen to you and talk to you, and he asks these great probing questions, because a lot of times we don't know that the symptoms that we might be having are not right. They're not normal. So I truly appreciate my cardiologist for doing that. I also learned that you definitely have to have set aside at least 30 minutes a day to get some exercise. And before I came on, you know, this has always been a conversation with my doctor and I about exercising and eating right because of my high cholesterol and all that stuff. And so when COVID hit and I couldn't go to the gym anymore, I bought myself a treadmill and I left the background up so my doctor can see that I actually have a treadmill now. I am using it every day. I make sure that I get that at least 30 minutes of exercise done. And I've found that when I do it first thing in the morning, I can get up and I can read my emails while I'm walking on my treadmill. So I get a great start to my day and I'm kind of ahead of the game, you know, when I hit the ground running for my normal real estate working day. So that is all I have to say. I have been very, very blessed.
Well, Sherry, that's an amazing story. And I think that what you're sharing, you're saving other people's lives as well. Your life not only was saved, but your story will hopefully affect someone else, and someone else will take those measures that are important by the exercise. 30 minutes a day, we all hear it, but we don't always do it. We get busy in real estate. We're also busy all the time, but you should never be so busy to take care of your health. And so I really do appreciate you sharing your story with us. And I do want to ask you, how do you feel now? I mean, you know, you said you had those different things going on. How do you feel?
Well, I'll tell you, before I had the open heart surgery, I was talking to Dr. Krueger, and he's like, well, what is going on with you? And I looked at him and I said, you know, I can only dance one song. I said, before I would dance all night at our realtor events. I could only dance one song now. I said, this is not a good thing. So the great news is I can dance all night again if I want to. Well, if that place is open up where we can actually go dancing, but I can dance again. And that just makes me tickled. I love that.
I love it too. And I look forward to dancing with you in San Diego. How about that?
Absolutely.
That's in November. So that's our national conference coming up. Thank you again, Sherry, for sharing your beautiful story with us. And we're glad that you're doing well. That's important. I want to move next to Dr. Krueger. And I know that heart disease affects women differently than men. And we're not always taken seriously when we go to our doctor. Like Sherry said, if your doctor's not listening, you find another doctor. So tell us a little bit about how that is relating to women and heart disease prevention.
Great. First off, I want to thank Sherry. It's brave to get before a national audience and be irrepressible like she is, and talk about what your real story is. And I think that if you're tired, if you're short of breath, if you just don't feel right, there are lots of things that can cause that. So we don't want to jump to just heart disease, but you don't want to ignore it. Sure, your estrogen protects you for 10 to 15 years on average from the average male, so that, you know, women tend to have heart disease later, and then when they present, it's worse. But like Sherry said, you really should know your family history. So when people in the audience are thinking, what should I worry about? A lot of us don't know what our blood pressure is. A lot of us don't know what our cholesterol is. Maybe we know that Uncle Joe died suddenly at 40, but you really should know your family history of the cholesterol. I've thrown in there sleep apnea. We'll talk about that later if there's time, because that's also a genetic thing with your tongue, and it really affects a lot of heart issues. But just know, you know, if the one caveat is that your history and genetics are not set in stone. And I love that. When I went to school many years ago, that you kind of thought, well, this is your history. You're going to get diabetes. You're going to get cancer. And what's so cool is that we now know that if you take away one point from me, it's that your lifestyle is crucial. Whether you smoke, whether you ignore your blood pressure, whether you eat a lot of stuff that really raises your cholesterol, and whether you ignore symptoms. I think society has taught us if you're over 25, you're kind of old, you should be tired, you should wake up, feel terrible, be sleepy in the afternoons. And now, on the other hand, a lot of us that are middle-aged know that old is like 90. We're not going to, say 70 is even, or 80 is old. And so anyway, pay attention to your symptoms. The lifestyle changes. I love this guy. If you take away an author, it would be Dean Ornish. And 30 years ago, he wrote a book about how to change your heart disease profile. And we kind of thought, oh, Dean, how can you reverse heart disease? It kind of just progresses. Your pipes get all clogged with cholesterol, and eventually have a heart attack. And what he's shown is that if you exercise and you watch your internal stress, you talked about meditation and prayer. If you eat plant-based proteins, and we'll get around to that in a minute, and you pay attention to cholesterol and blood pressure, you can not only reverse heart disease, but now he just wrote a book a couple of years ago called Undo It. And he found that 500 cancer genes is turned off. Your chance of dementia goes way down. Your chance of diabetes goes down, and your chance of a heart attack goes way down. So I am very hopeful that you take away, you say, okay, I don't care how old I am, I can change my profile. I can make my risk lower. And what's cool is you can also feel a lot better. You can dance all night, like Sherry said. And so a lot of what I hope providers are doing across the country is listening to women so that if they're just tired, something's going on. It's not just that you have heavy chest pressure to the jaw or down your left arm. Sure, a lot of women have that, but some can be just tired. And what I look for is exercise. So, that's the clue. Like Sherry said, she couldn't exercise. She was 5 years ago, and she couldn't now. So I tell people, what do you do exactly? And what are your symptoms? And what has changed? And then you can untether. Sometimes it's anemia. Sometimes it's, they're not sleeping well, but you want to get to the bottom of it. And so I think in general, women present a lot of ways like men. They tend to present older and with more serious conditions. But I think that there's such a wide spectrum of unhealthiness that just don't take your current situation and say, well, it's supposed to be the way it is. So that's probably my main point of symptoms. Look for all sorts of clues, shortness of breath and such. Some people have these, they say, one of the other things that docs and nurses do in the emergency room, they go, how's your pain? And invariably, it's never a pain. It's a heaviness or a tightness or a squeezing or a fullness. Lots of words to describe something deep and kind of funny. And so anyway, and it comes on when you're walking or when you're upset, not after you've had a big meal and laying on the couch. That's often something else. So those are the symptoms. The other thing I want to talk about is just give everybody hope on the treatment is that, again, a lot of your relatives that had heart attacks early never watched their blood pressure. They smoked, you didn't. They didn't watch their cholesterol and stuff. So you can do those things. I was not a tofu fan 10 years ago, and my wife makes great tofu now. And I tell people, many of us had certain beans and lentils and nuts and soy earlier, and we've gotten away from it. We kind of think fish, meat, chicken, fish, meat, chicken. And so I would argue, try to do the Ornish thing in pieces. Do something that you can do long-term. It's like the best diet you have is something that's really not a diet. It's just your life changes. I even joke, hang around healthy people like Sherry. They'll get you a treadmill. They'll get you dancing. And that if you hang around negative people that are stressed and internally, tight, if you hang around people that smoke or don't want to walk, then you probably won't do that either. They're contagious. Habits are. So anyway, be positive about changing your life. There's another book out there. This is a kind of a sidelight, but again, they've looked at why people live to 100 and their brain's still there and they didn't have a lot of other diseases and they're active. And they looked around the world and they ended up calling them blue zones. And the Seventh-day Adventists in Southern California were one. Their protein source is different. And They looked at Guam. The ladies are assigned a group of 5 to be your support group for life, which I find fascinating. And Sardinia, where people walk everywhere. And all of these places, they respect the elders. They all had a little alcohol, which is good news for all of us, but not a lot. They all had some type of religious faith that they practiced. And that's back to internal stress and trust. As Ornish said, when he looked at the cardiology literature in the 1980s, the word love never came up. And as Pamela was saying, it's a key part of life. We talk about on Valentine's Day, but how we are inside is really key, whether we have a heart attack. So anyway, I've kind of gone over the rails on the lifestyle, but you need hope. Yeah, you can look at your cholesterol numbers and your blood pressure numbers, but how you are active. And I have a lot of people that they've been quarantined, they're depressed, and they end up saying, I walked in my assisted living home back and forth, 5 times a day, or else, I did something to keep active. So I love preventing. And even if you've had some heart problems, you can definitely prevent having worse disease. Now, I forgot to say, and I was supposed to, I love questions. So interrupt me now. The last Zoom I did, lots of people had more interesting questions than I was talking about. So I want to touch on sleep apnea in a minute, but interrupt me with a question. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I think if we have any, Cindy and Olivia will let us know. So go ahead and go on to sleep apnea if you'd like.
Sure. So ideal again with cardiac problems and arrhythmias, and 8 or 9 out of 10 of every arrhythmia I ever run into, whether they're 30 years old or whether they're 80 years old, has a link with sleep apnea. Besides heart failure and heart attacks, all have this incredible link. And we used to think, it's just the giant guy at the bus station that's always sleepy and snoring and falling, can't stay awake. But now we realize it's a back of the throat issue. It's kind of a genetic thing in many ways. And I have marathon runners that come in with an arrhythmia, and I end up saying, I wonder if you have sleep apnea. And to a person, they all fold their arms and they say, I sleep fine. I say, you're unconscious. You don't know what you do. Have people told you? And they go, oh yeah, they say I snore horribly. That's about half the time. Or else there'll be a spouse that says, oh yeah, he chokes like a dog and I just roll him over on his side. He starts breathing again, but he always wakes up. So I haven't said anything for 20 years. And I want to go back in time and interrupt sleep apnea early on before they get high blood pressure and rhythms and heart failure. So if you wake up tired, that's a real clue. You've been in bed 7 hours, you shouldn't be tired. If you fall asleep pretty readily or really sleepy in the afternoon, it's not just a little bit snoozy, but pretty darn sleepy, then that's a big clue. And the other is a weird one. No one volunteers, is your short-term memory is fritzy. And no one says it because they think they have Alzheimer's, but often they have poor sleep. Now, a lot of things can give you poor sleep, insomnia. When I work 30 hours in a row, my short-term memory goes and I sleep and my Alzheimer's is gone. But for sleep apnea, it's one of those clues. So genetics in there, waking up tired, and then of course having any cardiac problem. And I probably diagnosed, probably the one thing in the last 10 years that has really changed my practice is that probably 150 people a year new I see have sleep apnea, and they've seen other physicians. But back to what I said, we all think we're supposed to feel tired or old and sleepy. And often those are sleep apnea. And it's been a radical change for people. I love it. The machines are better. They have 30 different masks now. Everybody hears about, it's horrible to wear a CPAP or a nasal PAP, but they're getting better. And again, if you have a person that's not sympathetic and work with you, get a different person, just like, get a doctor that listens to you or a nurse practitioner. So thanks for letting me run over on that.
That's okay. No, it's valuable information for our listeners, definitely. So when you're saying your husband snores or your wife snores a lot, that is a sign, or is that
a big sign? A big sign.
Really? And should be addressed.
Should be addressed. And, you have somebody watch them and see if they hold their breath. And I even joke, you can get on the internet and overnight or an oximeter for your fingernail, how your oxygen levels are. Everybody with COVID has been measuring how, their status is. And you can have somebody watch you while you sleep, and your oxygen shouldn't go up and down 3 or 4%. It should stay rock stable. And that's another way to, find out if you have holding your breath, because you don't know. And again, that's probably the tightest association with heart disease that I've ever seen is the sleep apnea. And I love, jumping in early and making a difference.
Thank you. And that is very valuable information. Thank you. What was the Dean? How do you spell Dean's last name?
Oh yeah, Ornish, Ornish. And he
Just
used
like
to
it's
argue.
spelled.
Yeah, he used to argue with Atkins' diet. Atkins was high fat, you could lose weight
Right.
with low carbs. And Ornish says, low fat Chinese vegetarian diet. And that was probably 30 years ago. And he's gotten smarter. He has a diet that's more interesting than just, straight vegetarian. But so, yeah, Ornish is probably my book that I hand to people that say, I don't want to know cutting edge cardiology. I want to know how to change my life. And I go, well, are you ready? And so, they pick and choose what they can out of the book.
That's excellent. Thank you so much, Doctor.
Yeah, thanks.
And so we're going to go ahead and move on to Lisa Hinton. Lisa, you are the executive director for the Chicago Heart Association. And I know you're wearing your red today because that's appropriate, right? So tell us a little bit about the Heart Association and some of the research. I know you said they're doing amazing stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So the American Heart Association is also the American Stroke Association. So that's important to know. But we have been around for nearly 100 years. But over the last about 20 years, not quite, it started in 2004, we really took a firm and strategic focus on women's health and understanding heart disease in women. And one of the things that we saw at the time is certainly heart disease was seen as a man's disease, both just publicly, if you asked anyone on the street, if you surveyed awareness, that's what they would tell you. Heart disease is an old man's disease, right? It's not something that happens to women. The other thing is that when you look at research, what's being researched, it's being done on men, or it was at the time. So when things regarding the heart were being researched, largely the subjects were men or the research was being done by men. And so we knew that we needed to do something about that. One, to drive awareness and increase awareness, because heart disease takes 1 in 3 women. 1 in 3. That's nearly a woman every minute. So if you think about the amount of time you've sat listening to this session and the number of women who've lost their life from heart disease, I mean, this is something we need to be paying attention to. And most women did not know that. The other thing that we know we really need to do is understand the way that heart disease presents in women. And there's been some great information shared on that, so I won't belabor that, but the research side of that is so critical. So in 2004, the AHA launched a campaign called Go Red for Women. Hopefully some of you have heard of it, or maybe even have had the chance to engage with it. But the Go Red for Women campaign invests dollars in research to study heart disease in women. Also in advocacy to give women a voice in their health and their health care, particularly in matters of the heart or brain, and to really tackle that issue of spreading awareness so that women knew that heart disease was one of their biggest health threats and that all women know that. The Go Red for Women campaign has also now created this vast international community of women, and there's tons of events and engagement and resources. And I think one of the important things for this audience to know, because we've heard from Sherry about her story and from the doctor about all of the facts, is what you go do now. And that's what the AHA is really here for. So certainly we help guide best practice and research and clinical outcomes in that way. But we have tons of resources for each of you. So if you go to goredforwomen.org, you can find recipes that follow the DASH diet or Mediterranean diet, those types of diets that you've heard about that are heavy on plants, fruits, and vegetables, low in fat, low in sodium, low in sugar, etc. You can find actual recipes, how-to videos. You can find guided meditations to help you manage stress, workout tips and tricks, videos for guided workouts as well. That's been a huge need since COVID hit and we're all stuck at home, as Sherry mentioned, not going to the gym. So we needed to find other ways to stay fit. You can also find a platform to join in our advocacy efforts and use your voice. And that's called our You're the Cure Network. and a platform to take part in health research for women by joining Research Goes Red. So all of these resources, this whole community, and all of this can be found at goredforwomen.org. So there's just a ton there. And I think that's the big thing I want people to understand, because as the doctor said, heart disease can be prevented. So while it takes 1 in 3 women, while it is the #1 killer of women, it can be prevented up to 80% of the time. And that's through healthy living, eating right, exercising, knowing your numbers, as was talked about, managing your numbers, and really being your own advocate and taking care of your health.
So, and you know what, Lisa? Yeah, thumbs up from the doctor, Lisa. We talked about your volunteer organization, and Women's Council of Realtors is a volunteer organization. So we definitely have this in common. We give back because we're passionate about what we do. So if somebody wanted to volunteer or get involved in their community, what are some of the things that they could do with the American Heart Association?
Yeah, and there's a lot of different ways that can take place, especially now in the time when we're all being socially distant. One of the great ways to volunteer is by joining our advocacy network. And that could be as simple as you get alerts when there's something in your local town, state, or federally that may be of interest to you. And there's pre-written emails, a couple clicks, so you can raise your voice. It can be as simple as that, or it can go as in-depth to really being trained and partnering with our staff to go have those one-on-one conversations with your legislators. You can, again, join in research through Research Goes Red and volunteer your time to really be part of the next generation's health and our outcomes and what we're learning. You can also join the Go Red for Women movement, and there's tons of events and local volunteer opportunities to get involved, to spread awareness. So the best way to really, because I know this is a national forum, but to do that is to go to heart.org, or again, you can go to goredforwomen.org, and there'll be tons of opportunities. You can click into your local city or state, see what's coming up, what's going on, and get engaged that way.
That's really great stuff. I love the Go Red for Women with recipes and with meditation. Everything that Sherry has talked about, everything the doctor is saying is super important. I think we learned a lot today about taking care of knowing our numbers, and not just knowing our numbers, because I may know my numbers, but may not take any action, but taking the little steps of action. And I wanted to ask the doctor a quick question about, we all wear these watches now, and 10,000 steps. Yeah, look, we all have them. See, 10,000 steps. Is that like a benchmark, would you say, for staying active? Or is that just what do you 30 minutes a day or what?
I have to smile because the data, I think they drew it out of the thin air. Oh. I have to smile because in medicine, and I know Lisa knows this too in research, we used to be taught 6 glasses of water a day or 8 glasses. There was no research on that. They don't know how much water we're supposed to drink. And you think, it's 2021. You're kidding. We don't know how much liquid to have. No. So I think that exercise, you got to start somewhere. And it gets discouraging if you hear 10,000 steps and people do these competitions. You think, I only did 3,000. That's terrific if you really did less before. And I find it very difficult to get 10,000 steps. It's great because certain companies try to encourage their people to be active. And you have these people, they take their watch and they're like watching TV and, they're shaking their watch so that they can get steps in. And so I like the spirit of do something that you enjoy. And it often can be walking, it can be water walking, it can be swimming, biking, just something that's aerobic. You can talk during it. I call it the aerobic talk test. Mm-hmm. And I think the 10,000 is I think it's arbitrary, and I think it's too much for many people. So I don't want to throw water on the parade, because some people they just love exercise, and they should. But the data is both the blue zones and the orange type approach. You don't have to do a lot, but it's amazing how much we try to get the closest parking space and we just sit in our chairs. So get out. That was a long answer. Sorry, you were very nice to let me.
No, be active, and any way we can change our health habits to a healthier living is important to all of us.
Let's have Lisa weigh in on the 10,000 steps too, please.
Okay. Go ahead, Lisa.
Sure. No, I agree with what you're saying, Doctor. What we recommend at the American Heart Association is that you exercise for 30 minutes a day, at least 5 days a week.
Perfect.
So you're
Okay.
trying to get, a certain number of minutes. And here's the thing, and this has been touched on, that doesn't mean that you're running for 30 minutes every day.
Right.
That can be gardening, it can be walking, it can be swimming, it can be so many different, cycling, so many different things. And I know no one else heard this, but Sherry was telling us a story before we went live here about how in the morning she gets, I hope you don't mind this, Sherry, but you get on your treadmill and check your email. And that is perfect. You are fitting that into a part of your day, and that helps it become habit, and that makes it easy to make time for it. So I think that story and that example, finding ways to fit it into things you already do, is a winning solution.
Fabulous.
Thanks.
Is there any questions out there, Olivia or Cindy, before we end this live Zoom? Okay. I don't see. Okay, I don't see any. Thank you to all of you, Dr. Krueger, Lisa, Sherry, for sharing your stories. Go ahead. And yeah, he's sending some love your way, Sherry, I can tell. So thank you again. And this will be on our website and everywhere for other people. If we touch somebody and save somebody's life, that's what it's all about. So thank you again. We appreciate your time today, and we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.